In the ruins of a distant battlefield, a human soldier makes a choice no one else dared to. He saves a dying alien warrior. Not because he was ordered to, but because something deeper called to him. What followed was not just survival. It was a transformation that would echo across galaxies. Tonight, you're not just witnessing a sci-fi story. You're stepping into a hidden truth, buried in smoke and silence. A bond beyond biology. A child born from war, and destined to end it. Stay with us to uncover the mystery behind Bonfire, the Warrior's Pact. And ask yourself, would you risk everything for someone not your own? The battlefield was silent but not still. A dark wind moved across the ruined plain, carrying with it the bitter scent of ozone, scorched metal, and something older, something wrong. The ground itself seemed to breathe, hissing from the heat of recent plasma fire. Burned-out war matches lay sprawled like broken beasts, their limbs twisted, sparking intermittently in the gloom. Alec Ward stepped through the wreckage with the slow caution of a man who had seen too much. Each step crunched through shattered visors, fused circuits, and bones, some human, others less so. The sky above was an eerie shade of red-violet, heavy with thick clouds that pulsed faintly, as if echoing the violence that had just passed. An unnatural static clung to the air, making every hair on Alec's neck rise. His HUD flickered, distorted. No life signs. No allies. No comms. The 17th Division had been erased. He was alone. Then, movement, barely a whisper, caught the corner of his eye. Beneath the collapsed wing of a Drax command cruiser, a glint of silver. Hair, not metal. He froze. There, half buried beneath broken armor plating and scorched stone, was a figure, slim, graceful, wounded. Her skin shimmered faintly under layers of ash, an ethereal lavender hue like moonlight on deep water. Bioluminescent veins pulsed along her neck, growing dimmer with each second. Her chest rose shallowly. A Nari warrior. Even injured, she looked regal, her armor patterned with sharp crystalline edges that softly glowed with alien code. Part ritual, part technology. Her silver hair fanned across the debris like strands of starlight. Alec raised his plasma rifle by instinct. But when her eyes fluttered open storm gray, unfocused, yet ancient, he hesitated. There was no fear in her gaze, only resignation. Her lips parted. "You should go," she murmured, her voice a melody buried beneath pain. "I'm already dead." Alec didn't move. He didn't blink. "No," he said, lowering his weapon. His voice echoed, swallowed by the silence around them. He dropped to one knee, the heat from her broken armor radiating against his gloves. Debris hissed as he pushed it aside. "No," he repeated, more to himself now. And with effort, with resolve, he began to pull her from the wreckage, one ruined piece of the war choosing to save another. The world narrowed to fire and footsteps as Alec sprinted through the debris-strewn corridors of the fallen base, Rhyla pressed tightly against his chest. She was light, far too light for someone once feared across battlefields. Her skin burned hot against his armor, an alien fever coursing through her blood. Still, she clung to consciousness, whispering ancient words in a language he didn't understand. Above them, fractured beams creaked with every gust of wind. The stars beyond flickered dim by smoke and dust, like dying embers. His COMM link came alive with a hiss of static. Sergeant Ward, this is HQ Fragment Echo. Report. He pressed a finger to his earpiece, breath ragged. Alive. With a T-Nari survivor. Requesting medical evac. A pause. Then a voice, clipped and emotionless. Negative. Protocol 9 in effect. Non-human assets are not a priority. Extraction denied. It was like ice through his veins. He stopped, ducking into the remains of a shattered hangar. Metal groaned above, and the smell of coolant and charred flesh hung thick in the air. He laid her gently against the wall where light barely touched her face. She had heard. "You'll be punished," she whispered. "They won't forgive this." Alec stared at the shadows. Then at her. "Let them try." He pulled off his glove and touched the edge of a cracked healing vial to her side, watching the soft blue gel flow over her wounds. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Rhyla spoke again, voice rough. "I've seen your kind leave. Walk away. Choose safety." "I've lost everything," Alex said quietly. "My brother. My squad. My reason for fighting." Rhyla turned her head, her breath slow. "And yet, you stayed." He looked into her eyes. That same storm gray. But now softer. Reflective. "Maybe that's why I'm still alive," he whispered. "To choose something better." She said nothing. But her hand, faintly trembling, reached for his. And in the darkness of that ruined place, something unspoken passed between them. Not orders. Not duty. Something older than war. A promise. Certainly. Here is the creatively expanded version of scenes 3 to 5, written in the mysterious, immersive tone you requested. Each scene paints vivid visuals to help your listeners feel the atmosphere and tension of the unknown. The night pressed in like a living shadow, thick with the scent of scorched wires and dusted plasma. Above, the stars were choked behind layers of drifting ash. Somewhere far away, metal groaned as it settled into ruin. The world had gone quiet, but it was the kind of silence that watches you. They had taken shelter inside the broken hull of a fallen transport, a dead machine half sunken into the ground, its ribs exposed like the carcass of a forgotten beast. Cracks in the walls let thin moonlight filter through, casting soft lines across Rhyla's pale, bruised face. Alec knelt beside her, pulling a small emergency kit from his belt. With slow, practiced hands, he lit a chemical flame. The fire flickered to life with a sudden gasp, throwing warm light against the cold metal around them. Rhyla turned her head. The fire danced in her silver eyes. A faint, wistful smile curved her lips. "You humans," she whispered. "Still using fire, ancient and stubborn?" Alec chuckled softly. "We also still care about strangers." For a time, the crackling flame filled the silence between them. Shadows danced across the walls like ghosts retelling old battles. They spoke in low tones, cautious, like soldiers who didn't want to wake the dead. She spoke of the first time she killed. The screamless void that followed. The rituals of her people, how names were never spoken after death, only remembered in scent and song. Alec spoke of his brother. Of laughter before deployment. Of the letter he never finished writing. Then came silence again. But this one was softer. Rhyla reached for his hand. Her touch was cold, but steady. Her fingers traced the lines on his palm with curiosity, then certainty. "You carry more than weapons," she said. "You carry pain." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He just nodded. And in that broken shell of steel and sorrow, the silence between them finally felt less empty. When dawn arrived, it was gray and sickly. The sky had forgotten how to be blue. The air had turned sharp, metallic. Rhyla stirred beside Alec, her breath shallow and strained. Her skin shimmered oddly now, waves of dim violet light pulsing beneath the surface like slow lightning under glass. Alec crouched beside her, worry darkening his face. He'd seen injuries, he'd seen sickness. But this was something else. Her voice was thin, carried like a thread in the wind. "There's something that can heal me?" He leaned closer. "A Tinari chamber," she continued. "A sanctum, sacred. It fuses energy, spirit, thought." He didn't ask why she hadn't said anything before. He only asked one thing. Where? Her eyes fluttered. East Ridge. Beneath the fallen spires. Hidden. Protected. It's not for humans. Forbidden. He was already lifting her into his arms. "You won't make it alone," she said weakly. Alec adjusted his grip. "We won't make it if I leave you." The wind howled as they stepped outside, as if the world was warning them back. But they didn't stop. Each step into the ash was one deeper into unknown territory. And above them, the sky watched, waiting. They reached the ridge by midday. The land here was stranger, older. The wind carried whispers that weren't wind, and the ground hummed faintly underfoot, as if remembering things best left buried. Half covered by debris and overgrowth, the entrance revealed itself like a wound in the earth. Twisted beams and collapsed armor blocked the way, but beneath it all, something pulsed. Blue light. Subtle. Rhythmic. Alive. Alec pushed through rusted metal and shattered bone until the chamber door responded to Rhyla's presence. It parted slowly, with a deep sigh, like an ancient guardian reluctantly waking. Inside, the air was thick with energy. The walls were curved, organic, etched with symbols that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. At the center stood the sanctum core, a pot of smooth obsidian and glowing crystal veins, its surface gently pulsing like a heartbeat. Rhyla's face tightened as she looked at it. This chamber doesn't heal like yours. It merges. Alec turned to her. Merges what? Body. Memory. Emotion. If we enter together, it will bond us. Forever. We will not be two. He held her gaze for a long moment. Better to be bound to you, he said, than to watch you die. She blinked once, slowly, and nodded. Together, they stepped into the light. The chamber sealed with a whisper, and the blue glow intensified, wrapping around them like water and wind and fire all at once. Pain vanished first. Then came memory. Layers unfolding. Her birth beneath twin moons. His first snowfall. Her training. His grief. Her shame. His guilt. Then, stillness. Time stretched into a place, and that place was each other. When the pot opened again, Rhyla stood unaided. Her skin no longer shimmered with sickness, but with strength. And Alec, he could hear her thoughts like distant thunder. We are bonded now, she said softly. And in the beat of silence that followed, he knew it wasn't just truth. It was destiny. Here is the creatively expanded version of scenes 6 to 8, written in a vivid and mysterious tone, with detailed visuals to help listeners feel immersed in the unknown. The chamber's doors sighed open, releasing a wave of cool, charged air that shimmered against the scorched breeze outside. Alec and Rhyla stepped out not as two, but as one. Something was different. The wind moved around them, as if unsure how to touch what they had become. The ground beneath their boots seemed quieter, more respectful. Above, the clouds thinned, revealing a sliver of deep space, dark, endless, and strangely watchful. When the enemy scouts emerged from the smoke, their armored limbs clattered against broken stone. Insectoid heads turned in twitching unison, eyes glowing red with malice. But Alec and Rhyla didn't speak. They didn't need to. The first blast came from Alec's rifle's silent precision. Rhyla moved with him, blades gleaming like twin stars. She didn't swing. She flowed. He fired. She slashed. Together, they danced not with rage, but with purpose. Every motion answered the other, every dodge was already known. Left, she thought. Already moving, he replied without words. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like something new. Their enemies faltered, confused by the unnatural coordination, two bodies, one will. And when the last scout collapsed in a heap of cracked armor and leaking fluid, the battlefield fell still once again. Behind the twisted remains of a downed beacon, they crouched in cover, breath sinking, hearts thudding in harmony. Alec wiped a smear of ash from his cheek and grinned. I think I like being bonded. Rhyla smirked, her silver eyes catching the last flickers of energy in the air. You just like that I make you faster? A crackle of electricity danced between their joined palms. Neither disagreed. They moved through the wasteland like echoes of a forgotten prophecy, each step guided by instinct deeper than memory. The extraction beacon pulsed faintly in the distance, a blue strobe against a field of wreckage, like a lighthouse trapped in time. But before they reached it, Rhyla slowed, then stopped. She stood still, breath caught, eyes wide with something that wasn't fear but wasn't peace either. Her hand drifted slowly to her abdomen, where a soft warmth radiated outward in waves. Alec turned instantly, weapon half raised. "What is it?" he asked, scanning the ruins. She didn't answer at first. Instead, she whispered, "There's something inside me." Her voice was thin, caught between awe and confusion. "It's alive. New." The air itself seemed to pause. Alec's eyes locked on hers, and in that instant, they both knew. Their bond had not just saved her. It had created something. A spark. A flame. A child. Born not of war, but of connection. Half human. Half Tinari. Entirely unknown. He dropped to one knee, placing a hand gently beside hers. His voice was soft. "Well, I guess that makes us more than partners now." The glow in her skin pulsed gently, no longer sickly, but vibrant. Ryla's gaze shimmered, not with tears, but with something far older. "It seems," she said, "we're a family." And in the air around them, the beacon pulse flickered. Just a little brighter. Something had awakened. Not just within Rhyla but within both of them. The unborn child had no voice, no form. But its presence was undeniable. Alec's vision had sharpened. He could see energy patterns dancing across the sky, feel vibrations through the ground before footsteps arrived. Rhyla moved faster, smoother, guided by whispers from within. She no longer needed to scan for enemies. She sensed them. And when the Drax returned, this time in greater numbers, armor upgraded, weapons blazing, they expected to face two weary fugitives. They found something else entirely. Alec's plasma shots arced in perfect rhythm, as if guided by unseen threads. Rhyla's blades shimmered with otherworldly precision, carving not with force, but with purpose. Together, they moved like a storm with a will. Each attack landed before the enemy raised their weapons. Each defense anticipated before the threat appeared. But it wasn't just them anymore. Their child still nestled within was shaping the battle. Thoughts came faster. Movements sank deeper. Even time seemed to hesitate as they passed through the fray like spirits cloaked in firelight. And when it ended, when the smoke cleared and the last Drax fell in a pool of alien ichor, the battlefield was quiet again. But it wasn't silence born of destruction. It was silence born of awe. They didn't just survive. They won. And somewhere deep within Rhyla's core, a soft pulse answered. We are not done. Absolutely. Below is the expanded version of Scene 9 and Scene 10, using vivid imagery and a mysterious, atmospheric tone to immerse listeners in a sense of awe and the unknown. The last ridge fell behind them, its twisted silhouettes vanishing into smoke and starlight. The entrance to the hidden bunker yawned open like a wound in the mountain, massive steel doors covered in dust, long dormant, now humming faintly as if something within had sensed them. Alec carried Rhyla through the threshold, though she needed little help now. Power rippled quietly beneath her skin like lightning hidden behind silk. Inside, the air was sterile but charged. Lights flickered to life overhead, cool, artificial white. The walls were lined with systems of both human and T'Nari origin, sharp-edged terminals humming beside smooth, iridescent consoles that pulsed like living things. Waiting for them stood two groups. Human commanders in dark, rigid uniforms. T'Nari elders in robes threaded with strands of biolight. Eyes turned to them. Not with suspicion, but with something else. A kind of fearful reverence. "You, fused?" a human admiral asked, his voice hollowed by disbelief. A T'Nari matron narrowed her luminous eyes. "You carry life." Alec nodded once. Calm. Grounded. His voice cut through the heavy silence. "Yes. Because we chose to." That was when it began. The systems around them, once quiet, passive, began to shift. Lights dimmed, then brightened. Console glyphs reshaped. Frequencies synced. One by one, the circuits of two civilizations began to pulse in unison. From within Rhyla, a subtle glow began to emanate, blue and gold, spiraling gently. The child within had reached out. Connected. And the bunker responded. A T'Nari data column rose from the floor, interfacing with an Earth tactical node. Sparks danced. Code flowed. Symbols once incompatible now overlapped, fusing without force. Alec and Rhyla said nothing. They didn't have to. "This is the future," Rhyla said softly, her voice carrying through the chamber like a song remembered from a dream. "Not war. Not fear. But something new." No one replied. Because in the shifting light, in the impossible harmony of alien and human systems pulsing as one, everyone understood. She was right. Time passed. Not like before, measured in battles and bodies, but slower, deeper, like the turning of stars. In a chamber built by two species, shaped from metal and memory, Alex sat beside Rhyla. She lay in a cradle of light, surrounded by healing crystals and human sensors, wrapped in warmth that pulsed with life. Around them, the air shimmered softly, filled with unseen energy currents stirred by something more than machines. Alec held her hand, strong and steady. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The chamber dimmed as her breath deepened. Then came the cry, not of pain, but of awakening. A child entered the world. And he glowed. Softly at first. Then brighter. His skin bore the faint hue of starlit dusk, neither human nor Tinari, but something in between. His eyes opened wide, and the color inside them shifted like twin galaxies, earth brown and sky silver. The moment he breathed, the room responded. Monitors flickered. Data streams shimmered. Holograms adjusted. Even the lighting adjusted to his presence, pulsing in perfect sync with his heartbeat. A nurse stepped forward, eyes wide. "His name?" she asked. Rhyla, sweat on her brow and light in her voice, answered without hesitation. "Orion." The child cooed. And lights danced. Tiny sparks of energy rippled through the chamber. Consoles whispered. Systems previously incompatible began speaking in soft, glowing pulses. Alec looked down at the child, eyes full of something deeper than wonder. "This is just the beginning," he whispered. And he was right. For the galaxy had seen warriors before. It had known war, and division, and endless distrust between stars. But it had never seen this. A child born of choice, not command. A family forged not by law, but by light. Not a weapon, but a bridge. A living echo of the impossible. A new harmony rising from the ashes of war. And somewhere far beyond, in places no telescope had ever reached, something ancient stirred. Watching. Waiting. And perhaps, finally, listening. What began as a rescue became a revolution. Two lives, human and Tinari, merged by choice, not conquest. And from that union came a child, not a weapon, but a bridge. A living signal that the universe, fractured and cold, might still find harmony. So what do you think? Was it destiny? Or defiance? If this story sparked something in you, leave a comment below. Would you trust the unknown? Would you fight for it? And if you want more stories that push the edge of what we call reality, make sure you subscribe. This is Ether Enigma, where the truth is always stranger than fiction.